You've always been so emotional, Clara. That's why this decision is better left to people who can be more objective. Sylvia's words dropped like ice cubes into hot oil, splattering my chest with invisible burns. I stared at her across the long mahogany dining table, the kind with a centerpiece no one ever touches and chairs no one ever relaxes in. Her pearls gleamed under the chandelier, and her smile was so polite it made me want to scream. My name is Clara, and I've sat through a lot of fake dinners in this house. But tonight I knew something was coming. I just didn't know how far they'd go. Samuel sat next to me, his hand resting on my thigh like a paperweight. I could feel the heat of his palm, but not the comfort. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching his father, who was unfolding a stack of papers with a slow, deliberate precision, like they were sacred. Martin cleared his throat. We've been thinking about Lisa's care fund. It's a substantial amount, and with the right oversight, it could go even further. I blinked. Further than what? It's not an investment portfolio. It's for her therapy, her equipment, her... Exactly, Sylvia cut in, nodding like it was her idea. And we can help with that. We know people. We can maximize its potential. I laughed. It slipped out before I could stop it. Maximize? She's not a business venture. She's my sister. Samuel finally looked at me. Clara, no one's saying she isn't, but you're too close to this. You're not thinking long term. I turned to him slowly. You mean like when I changed her feeding tubes at 2 a.m. for 6 years? Or when I fought the insurance company for 6 months to cover her new wheelchair? That kind of too close. His jaw tensed. You're being defensive. And you're being a coward, I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. The room went silent except for the faint clinking of Sylvia's fork against her untouched salad. Martin slid the papers toward me. This is just a transfer of guardianship over the fund. You'll still be her legal guardian. But the financial side, well, it's better handled by professionals. Professionals like you? I asked, my voice flat. Sylvia's smile didn't falter. It's not personal, dear. It's just what's best for Lisa. I looked down at the papers. The legalese blurred together, but I recognized the structure. They wanted control of the trust, full financial authority, and they thought I'd just hand it over. Samuel's hand pressed harder against my leg. Clara, sign it. I turned to him. Just like that? He nodded. It's not a big deal. I stared at him. Really stared. The man I married. The man who once said he loved how fiercely I protected Lisa. The man who now sat beside me, siding with people who saw my sister as a liability. I reached for the pen. Sylvia's eyes lit up. You're doing the right thing. I signed. One stroke at a time. My signature neat and slow, like I had all the time in the world. When I finished, I looked up and smiled. You're right, I said, handing the papers back. It's better this way. Sylvia exhaled like she'd just won a war. You won't regret this. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Oh, I'm sure I won't. Samuel looked relieved. See? That wasn't so hard. I leaned down, kissed him lightly on the cheek. Not hard at all. Then I picked up my phone from under the napkin beside my plate, slid it into my purse, and walked out of the dining room. They didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that 2 weeks ago, I found encrypted messages between Samuel and his parents, that I'd seen the bank account inquiries, the subtle shifts in his behavior, the way he started asking about Lisa's expenses like it was his business. They didn't know I'd already moved the money. They didn't know I'd already restructured the fund under a bulletproof trust with a lawyer who specialized in disability protections. And they definitely didn't know that the entire dinner, every word, every manipulative suggestion, every smug little nudge, was recorded. I stepped into the cool night air, the quiet hum of crickets greeting me like old friends. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from rage, from clarity, from the kind of calm that comes right before the storm. I got into my car, started the engine, and called Iris. "It's done," I said. She whistled. "You signed?" "Yep." "And the recording?" "Crystal clear, every word." There was a pause. "You okay?" I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were steady, my mouth a line of steel. "They think they won," I said. "Let them," Iris replied. I hung up and drove home. Lisa was already asleep when I got in. Her breathing was soft and rhythmic, the kind of sound that reminded me why I fought so hard. I sat beside her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "They think they can take you from me," I whispered. "But they don't know who they're dealing with." I kissed her cheek and stood up. Tomorrow the real game would begin. The first time I noticed something was off, Samuel left his phone face down on the kitchen counter. He never did that, not unless he was hiding something. I was chopping vegetables for dinner, Lisa humming softly in her chair behind me, when his phone lit up. The preview flashed a name I didn't recognize, M. Harris. And a message. "She doesn't suspect a thing. I'll get her to sign by next week." I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. That one message told me everything. That night, after Samuel fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and called Iris. "You were right," I whispered into the phone. "They're planning something." "Okay," she said, instantly alert. "We're not waiting. I'm putting you in touch with someone tomorrow. Trust me, you'll want him on your side." The next day, I met Duncan in a small office above a bakery downtown. No fancy suits, no marble floors, just a man in rolled-up sleeves and a shelf full of disability law books. He shook my hand firmly. "Iris said you're in a situation." I slid a folder across the table. "My sister's trust fund. My husband and his parents are trying to take control of it. They say I'm too emotional to manage it." Duncan opened the folder, flipping through the documents. "Is your sister under your legal guardianship?" "Yes, fully. I've been her caregiver since we lost our parents." He nodded. "Then they don't have a leg to stand on. But we're not just going to defend. We're going to make sure they can't touch a penny." He explained the steps. We'd restructure the fund into a special needs trust, fully protected and legally insulated. I'd remain the sole trustee, with built-in oversight to satisfy any court. And best of all, completely invisible to anyone who wasn't authorized. "They'll think they've won," Duncan said, tapping the table. "Let them. That's when they get sloppy." I signed the documents with shaking hands. Not from fear, from adrenaline. Back at home, I started planting seeds. I left my phone out more often. I asked Samuel vague questions about money. I acted confused when he mentioned long-term planning. I let him think I was tired, overwhelmed, vulnerable. And I installed voice recorders, one under the dining room table, another in the living room lamp, a third in my home office, tucked behind a stack of books. I didn't care about the ethics. They were coming for Lisa's future. There was no line I wouldn't cross. A week later, I met Iris at our usual coffee spot. "You ready for this?" she asked, sipping her iced latte. "They're planning a dinner," I said. "Sylvia invited me like it was a casual get-together, but I know they're going to pull the trigger." Iris smirked. "You going to let them?" "Oh, I'm going to let them think they did." We went over the plan again. I'd sign the papers, smile, play the part, then let them walk straight into the trap. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully. Conservative, soft colors. Nothing that said war. I tucked my phone under a napkin on the table before anyone else arrived. The recorder was already running. Samuel kissed my cheek like everything was normal. Sylvia complimented my dress. Martin poured wine. It was all rehearsed. A performance, and I played my role perfectly. When they slid the papers across the table, I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I signed with a smile, handed the pen back, and watched their faces light up like they'd just won the lottery. They had no idea the money was already gone. That night, after I left the Harris estate, I went home and backed up everything. The audio files, the signed documents, the messages from Samuel's phone I'd quietly photographed. I sent copies to Iris, to Duncan, to a secure cloud folder only I could access. Lisa was asleep again when I walked into her room. I sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand. "They think they're clever," I said softly, "but they're not." She squeezed my fingers, just once, her way of saying she understood. The next morning, I made pancakes. Lisa giggled when I flipped one too high, and it almost hit the ceiling. I was still laughing when Samuel walked into the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, his face pale. "What's wrong?" I asked, loading syrup onto a plate. He didn't answer. Just stared at me, then at Lisa, then back at me. I knew that look. They'd called the bank, and found nothing. "Everything okay?" I asked again, sweet as sugar. He hung up without a word and walked out. I turned back to Lisa, cutting her pancake into small pieces. "Game on," I whispered. Samuel's voice echoed down the hallway before I even saw him. "What do you mean there's no access? That's impossible." I stood in the kitchen, calmly drying a plate. Lisa was in the living room, watching her favorite cartoon, oblivious to the storm brewing in the next room. He stormed in, phone still pressed to his ear. "Yes, I'm the secondary contact. My wife signed over the authority last night. Check again." He paused, listening, then slammed the phone onto the counter. "They said the account's locked, that there's no record of the transfer." I raised an eyebrow. "That's strange." Samuel turned on me. "What did you do?" "I signed the papers, remember? Just like you asked." He stepped closer. "Don't play dumb. That money was supposed to be moved." "Was it?" I said, folding the towel slowly. "Because from what I remember, it was for Lisa's care, not for your parents to play Monopoly with." His jaw clenched. "You lied." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "I protected my sister." Before he could answer, the front door burst open. Sylvia and Martin walked in like they owned the place. "Where is she?" Sylvia snapped. "Excuse me?" I said, walking toward them. "The trust. You said you transferred it." "I signed your papers," I said lightly. "But I never said they meant anything." Martin's face turned red. "You forged your signature?" "Nope. I signed them. But the trust was restructured weeks ago. Legally. Irrevocably. You have no access." Sylvia's voice cracked. "That's fraud." I laughed. "Is it? Because I have a lawyer who says otherwise. And I have recordings." Her face twisted. "What recordings?" "From last night. From your little speech about how I'm too emotional to make decisions. From the part where you all admitted you were planning this for weeks." Samuel looked like he'd been punched. "You recorded us?" I walked to my office, opened the drawer, and pulled out a small speaker. I hit play. Sylvia's voice filled the room. "She's too attached. We'll handle it better. This is for the best." Then Martin. "She won't fight it. She's not that smart." Then Samuel. "She'll sign. I'll make sure of it." I hit stop. Silence. Sylvia's hands were shaking. "You can't use that in court." I smiled. "Actually, I can. I consulted a lawyer before I did anything. Everything was done under legal guidance. You might want to brush up on the laws around consent and financial manipulation." Martin stepped forward. "You're going to regret this." "Are you threatening me in my own home?" I asked, tilting my head. "Because I can add that to the report." Sylvia looked at Samuel. "Do something." He didn't move. He just stared at the floor, hands in his pockets. I walked past them and sat beside Lisa, who was still watching TV, unaware of the chaos. "I think it's time you all left," I said. Sylvia's voice was low and venomous. "You'll be hearing from our attorney." "I'm counting on it." They left in silence, the door slamming behind them. Samuel lingered. You really did all this behind my back? He asked. You really thought I wouldn't? I replied. He looked at Lisa, then at me. You don't have to do this. We can fix it. I stood up. No, Samuel. You broke it. And now you're going to watch me fix it without you. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He walked out without another word. I picked up my phone and called Duncan. They tried to access the account, I said. He chuckled. Let me guess. They hit a wall. A big one. And I played the recordings. Good, he said. They'll probably try to file something anyway. But we're ready. I hope they do, I said. I want this on record. He paused. Just be careful, Clara. People like that don't like losing. I'm not afraid of them, I said. That night I sat with Lisa on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. The house was quiet again, but my mind was racing. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd fold. But they forgot one thing. I've been fighting for Lisa her whole life, and I'm just getting started. I was folding laundry when Samuel knocked on the bedroom door like he lived in someone else's house. Can we talk? He asked, voice soft. I didn't look up. You're already talking. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets, eyes darting to the basket of Lisa's clothes on the bed. I feel like things got out of hand. I dropped a folded shirt into the pile. You mean when your parents tried to steal from my disabled sister? He flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I turned to face him. You sat there while they called me unstable and told me I wasn't fit to handle her care. You didn't say a word. I was trying to keep the peace. No, I said. You were trying to stay in their good graces. He sighed. They just want what's best for the family. I stared at him. Lisa is my family. You made it clear she never counted to yours. He sat on the edge of the bed. Can we start over? I'm serious. No more secrets. I crossed my arms. You're about 3 betrayals too late. He looked up at me, eyes glossy. I miss us. I didn't reply. I picked up the laundry basket and walked out. That afternoon, I got a message from an old acquaintance, Jessica. We'd met years ago at a Harris family event, bonded over awkward small talk and wine. She'd once pulled me aside when I first got engaged to Samuel and said, "Be careful. They don't like women they can't control." I hadn't listened then. I was listening now. Her message was simple. I heard what happened. I have something you need to know. We met at a quiet cafe off Main Street. She looked older, sharper. There was something in her eyes. Regret, maybe. They tried this before, she said, stirring her tea. With my cousin. She had Down syndrome. Her parents left a small trust for her after they passed. I leaned in. What happened? Jessica's jaw tightened. Sylvia convinced the girl's aunt to hand over control. Said she'd invest it, grow it. Within a year, the money was gone. All of it. Gone where? No one knows. The aunt tried to sue, but Sylvia claimed it was a market crash. Said she'd done everything legally. They buried it. I sat back, cold spreading through my chest. Why didn't you say anything before? I tried. Remember that wedding? I pulled you aside, but you were glowing and in love, and I didn't want to be the bitter friend. You should have said it anyway. I know, she said. That's why I'm saying it now. I left with a signed statement from Jessica and a file of old emails she'd saved. Ones that showed Sylvia manipulating financial decisions, pushing people into signing things they didn't understand. When I got home, Iris was already waiting on my porch. You're not going to like this, she said, holding up a manila envelope. What now? She handed it to me. They filed a lawsuit. Fraud and mismanagement of funds. I opened it. Legal jargon, court dates, accusations. My stomach turned. They're accusing you of stealing from Lisa, Iris said, trying to flip the narrative. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. Of course they are. We'll fight it, she said. You have everything on your side. The recordings, the documents, Jessica's statement. They're grasping at straws. Inside, Lisa was in her chair playing with a stuffed rabbit. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. I knelt beside her. They're still trying, baby. But we're not backing down. That night, I sat with Iris on the back porch while Lisa slept. I don't get it, I said. Why go this far? What do they even want? Iris lit a cigarette, something she only did when she was really pissed. Control, power, and probably money. People like them don't see people like Lisa as human. They see her as an asset. I looked out at the dark yard. I should have seen it sooner. You saw it when it mattered, she said. You're not just protecting her. You're setting a precedent. If they get away with this, they'll do it again. I nodded. Then we burn it all down. The next morning, a woman from the court showed up. A social worker, appointed to evaluate Lisa's care. Samuel must have filed a concern. I let her in, showed her Lisa's therapy room, her feeding schedule, her medical files. Lisa smiled at her, even let her hold her hand. After an hour, the woman looked at me and said, "Whatever they told the court, it doesn't match what I see here." "Thank you," I said, holding back tears. She smiled. "You're doing everything right." After she left, I sat on the floor in Lisa's room and finally let myself cry. Not because I was scared, because I was tired, because I loved my sister more than anyone, and I was so damn tired of proving it. Iris came over later with takeout and a bottle of wine. We sat on the couch, Lisa between us, her head on my shoulder. "They're going to regret this," Iris said. I looked at my sister, then at her. They already do. Duncan dropped the stack of documents on my kitchen table with a thud. "That's everything," he said. "Bank statements, the new trust structure, emails, witness statements. We're ready." I scanned the top page. And the recordings? Labeled, time-stamped, and transcribed. You did good, Clara. Lisa was in her chair by the window, watching the birds outside. She turned her head slightly when Duncan spoke, and he gave her a warm smile. "We're going to make sure no one ever touches your money again, sweetheart." I touched her shoulder, then looked at Duncan. "They're not going to back down, are they?" "No, but we'll bury them in truth." He packed up and promised to file everything first thing in the morning. After he left, I went to the kitchen to start dinner. I had just set water to boil when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello? Clara?" a woman's voice said. "This is Amy, Lisa's nurse. I got a call from your husband today." I froze. What did he say? He asked questions about Lisa's care. If I'd noticed anything off. If you ever seemed overwhelmed or unstable. I gripped the counter. He's trying to build a case. I told him everything's fine, that Lisa's thriving, that you're the most dedicated caregiver I've ever worked with. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I just thought you should know." Something about his tone. It didn't feel right. After we hung up, I sat down and stared at the floor. This wasn't just about money anymore. Samuel was trying to paint me as unfit. He was going to drag my name through the mud to get what he wanted. Iris came over an hour later, holding a folder. "Got something," she said, walking straight to the table. "Look at this." She pulled out a document, a property deed. "Martin took out a second mortgage on their vacation home 3 years ago," she said. "But the loan was backed by assets he didn't actually own." I frowned. "That's fraud." "Exactly. And guess what? He listed Lisa's trust fund as a family asset in the application." My stomach dropped. He used her name? Not directly. Just dependent family trust. But it's enough. He was planning this for a while. I stared at the paper. "They're in deeper than we thought." Iris nodded. "They're desperate. That's why they're coming after you so hard." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of it all pressing down. "I can't believe I married into this," I said. Iris looked at me. "You loved him." "I thought I did." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You loved the version of him he showed you. That's not your fault." I nodded, blinking fast. Later that night, after Lisa was asleep, I sat on the porch with a glass of wine. Iris had gone home, and the house was quiet again. I scrolled through old photos on my phone, me and Samuel at the beach, laughing, him holding Lisa's hand at Christmas. Fake moments, or maybe real ones once. I didn't know anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Duncan. "Evaluator cleared your household. Report filed. You're in the clear." I exhaled. The next morning, I walked into Duncan's office with a new fire in my chest. "They want to fight?" I said. "Let's give them one." He smiled. "That's what I like to hear." We filed a counter motion, a restraining order against the Harris family. No contact with Lisa. No access to the trust. No interference of any kind. We submitted every recording, every email, every document. Jessica's statement, the nurse's testimony, the mortgage fraud. We didn't just build a defense. We built a wrecking ball. That afternoon, I got a call from Samuel. "I need to see you," he said, voice hoarse. "Why?" "Please, just one conversation." I agreed, but only in public. We met at a park near downtown, open space, lots of people. I sat on a bench. He showed up late, eyes bloodshot, tie loose, hair a mess. He sat beside me without a word. "What do you want, Samuel?" He rubbed his face. "I messed up." I said nothing. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought we could control it, that we could help. "You wanted to help?" I snapped. "By stealing from a woman who can't speak for herself?" He looked down. "I'm being investigated. At work. Insider trading. Someone tipped them off." I raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious. I could lose everything." I turned to him. "You already did." He looked at me, eyes pleading. "Clara, can you fix this?" I stood up. "You called me too emotional, but you want me to clean up your mess?" He didn't answer. I leaned in, my voice low. "You tried to take everything from me, from Lisa. And now you want mercy?" He looked away. I walked off without saying another word. Some bridges don't burn. They explode. "You're sure you want to do this?" Duncan asked, sliding the thick packet across his desk. I picked it up, flipped through the pages. "Absolutely." We were filing the restraining order today, against Sylvia, Martin, and Samuel. It covered Lisa, the trust, and me. No contact, no interference, no loopholes. Duncan tapped the packet. "This will go public. They'll get served. Their names will be on record." "Good," I said. "Let them explain that to their country club friends." He smiled slowly. "Let's ruin their afternoon." By the time I got home, the process server had already done his job. Sylvia called me 3 times. I didn't answer. Then Martin tried. Then Samuel. I blocked them all. An hour later, Iris showed up with a USB drive and a grin. "You're going to want to see this." We sat at my kitchen table. Lisa was in her therapy swing, humming softly. Iris plugged the drive into my laptop and opened a folder labeled Public Image. "These are community board emails," she said. "Sylvia's on the board for that arts foundation, right?" I nodded. "Well, turns out they don't like being associated with lawsuits involving disabled people, especially when there are recordings." She clicked a file. A forwarded email popped up. "Given the recent legal matter involving Mrs. Harris and the trust of a dependent adult, we will be suspending her role on the board effective immediately." I leaned back in my chair. "She's out?" "Completely. And Martin's business partner just pulled out of a project after the mortgage fraud came up. They're hemorrhaging." Iris opened another file. "And Samuel? His firm placed him on indefinite leave. There's an internal investigation now. I stared at the screen. All of this, it's actually working. Clara, she said, you didn't just protect Lisa. You exposed them. People like that count on silence. That night, I finally let myself breathe. Not relax, just breathe. Until the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Samuel. Drunk, red-eyed, slurring. Please, he said. You have to help me. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. You shouldn't be here. I lost everything, he said, swaying slightly. My job. My parents won't talk to me. I'm under investigation. Clara, I'm ruined. You did that to yourself. I didn't know they'd go this far, he whispered. They told me it was just a formality, that we'd help Lisa, that you'd be okay. I stared at him. You sat there while they planned to steal from her. You called me unstable. You tried to make the nurse question me. He sank onto the porch steps. I don't even know who I am anymore. I do, I said. You're a man who let his family destroy everything good in his life because he was too weak to stand up to them. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. I loved you. No, I said. You loved control. And when you lost it, you chose them. He reached for my hand. Clara, please. I stepped back. You need to leave. Now. He stood slowly, stumbled, then walked down the steps and into the night. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, heart pounding. The next morning, Duncan called. Court date is set. 2 weeks. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. We'll be ready. He paused. You okay? Getting there. 2 weeks passed in a blur. Prep meetings, witness calls, final paperwork. Jessica agreed to testify in person. Amy, Lisa's nurse, wrote a glowing affidavit. The court-appointed evaluator submitted her report. Clara provides exceptional care in a loving, stable environment. The morning of the hearing, I dressed Lisa in her favorite yellow sweater. I wore black, not for mourning, for clarity. Iris picked us up, her car already stocked with snacks and water bottles. You ready to end this? She asked. I looked at Lisa in the back seat, smiling at her reflection in the window. Let's finish it. When we walked into the courthouse, Sylvia and Martin were already there. Sylvia wore a stiff navy suit and a frozen smile. Martin didn't look at me. Samuel sat behind them, alone. The hearing started. Duncan laid everything out, chronologically, clearly, with receipts. Literally. He played the recordings. He showed the trust restructuring. He submitted the mortgage documents, the board emails, Jessica's statement. Sylvia's lawyer tried to argue concern for Lisa's future. Duncan countered with, then why attempt to access the trust before the ink was dry? The judge listened, stone-faced. Then it was my turn. I stood. My hands didn't shake. I've cared for my sister since I was 19. I changed her feeding tubes. I fought for her therapies. I've never missed a single appointment. The only time she's ever been in a hospital is when her spine surgery got scheduled early. She is my family, and I will never let anyone use her for profit or power. Silence. The judge looked at the Harrises. Then the verdict came. Restraining order granted. Permanent. Sylvia and Martin, barred from contacting Lisa or accessing the trust. Samuel, no legal standing, no access, no rights. I was reaffirmed as sole guardian and trustee. Outside the courtroom, Samuel followed me down the steps. Clara, I turned to him. You called me too emotional, I said. Funny. That's the only thing that kept me from burying you further. He didn't reply. He just watched me walk away. The courthouse hallway was too cold, too quiet. My heels clicked against the tile as I walked beside Duncan. Lisa's care binder clutched tight in my arms. Iris followed close behind, her phone buzzing nonstop with messages from reporters and legal contacts. They're already asking for statements, she whispered. Let them wait, I said. Inside the courtroom, Sylvia sat stiff-backed, her lips pressed into a line so tight it looked painful. Martin sat beside her, his face pale, eyes darting around like he was looking for an exit. Samuel was alone again, slumped in the back row, a shadow of the man I used to know. The judge entered. We all stood. Let's proceed, she said, her voice even. Duncan stepped forward first. Your Honor, we're submitting final evidence of the trust's legal restructuring, along with documentation of recorded conversations, financial misconduct, and prior incidents of exploitation involving the plaintiffs. He handed over a thick folder. The judge flipped through it without a word. Then Sylvia's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my clients maintain that their intentions were in the best interest of the dependent party. They were misled, manipulated, and the judge raised a hand. I've reviewed the evidence. The recordings speak for themselves. Sylvia shifted in her seat. Martin looked like he might be sick. Mrs. Harris, the judge said, turning to me, you've proven beyond doubt that your sister's care has been consistent, loving, and legally sound. The plaintiff's actions show a pattern of manipulation and self-interest. She paused. This court grants full and permanent guardianship and financial control to Clara. The restraining order will remain in place indefinitely. The plaintiffs are barred from any future contact with Lisa or involvement in her care or trust. Sylvia gasped. Martin said nothing. Samuel lowered his head into his hands. The gavel came down. It was over. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Iris stepped in front of me. No comment, she said firmly, shielding me and Lisa as we walked down the steps. I didn't stop until we reached the car. I opened the door, helped Lisa in, and fastened her belt. She looked up at me and smiled, her eyes bright. We did it, I whispered, brushing her hair back. Iris opened the passenger door. You want me to drive? No, I said. I want to feel the road. We pulled away from the courthouse, the chaos fading behind us. I drove to our favorite park, the one with the ducks and the wide, flat paths. I parked under a tree and helped Lisa out of the car. She giggled as the wind caught her scarf. We sat on a bench. Just us. Iris joined a few minutes later, holding 2 coffees. You didn't just win, she said. You buried them. They buried themselves, I said. I just handed them the shovel. She laughed, then turned serious. You sure you're okay? I nodded. I'm just tired. But yeah, I'm okay. We sat in silence for a while, watching Lisa laugh at a squirrel trying to steal a chip bag from the trash can. Then I saw him. Samuel. He stood at the edge of the parking lot, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on us. He looked like hell. Suit wrinkled, face hollow. I stood. Clara, Iris warned. I've got it. I walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know, he replied. I needed to see you. One last time. I crossed my arms. Why? He looked past me at Lisa. Because I forgot what this was all about. I got caught up in their world. I let them convince me that money mattered more than people. I didn't respond. I lost everything, he said, and I deserve that. But you didn't. You never did. He took a step forward. I'm sorry. I held up a hand. Don't. You don't get to apologize and walk away feeling lighter. You let them try to destroy us. He nodded. I know. You let them use her name on a mortgage. You tried to make me look unfit. You stood in that courtroom and said nothing. I know, he said again, voice cracking. I turned to go. Clara, he said, I loved you. I looked back once. I loved who I thought you were. Then I walked away. Iris was waiting with a look that said, You okay? I nodded. Samuel got in his car and drove off. Back at the bench, Lisa reached for my hand. I took it, squeezing gently. "You're safe now," I said. "They can't touch us." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. For the first time in months, I let myself relax. Not because the fight was over, but because we'd won. The movers had just finished unloading the last box when Lisa let out a soft squeal from her chair. Her eyes were locked on the window in front of her, where sunlight streamed through sheer lavender curtains and spilled across the hardwood floor. "I know," I said, smiling. "It's brighter, isn't it?" She flapped her hand excitedly, her version of applause. The therapy room was finally done. Soft foam mats, a new adjustable bed, shelves filled with sensory toys and books. No more narrow hallways, no more creaky steps. Just space, light, and peace. I stepped out into the living room, where Iris was crouched over a pile of cords, trying to set up the Wi-Fi. "Remind me again why we didn't just hire someone to do this?" she muttered. "Because you're too stubborn to let a stranger touch your router," I said, dropping onto the couch. She rolled her eyes. "Fair." The new house was smaller, but it was ours. No more shared property. No more Harris family mail showing up at my door. Just me, Lisa, and a front porch with enough space for morning coffee. "You get the divorce papers signed?" Iris asked, finally standing up and wiping her hands on her jeans. "Yesterday. He didn't contest anything. Just signed and sent them back." She raised an eyebrow. "No final speech? No last-minute plea?" "He left a note. Said he hoped I'd find peace." Iris snorted. "He should have hoped for a good lawyer." I laughed, and it felt real this time. Deep, from the chest. Not a reflex. Not a mask. There was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Duncan holding a thick manila envelope. "Thought I'd drop this off in person," he said. I let him in, and he handed me the file. "What is it?" "Final trust paperwork. Sealed, secured, and backed by a third-party oversight board. No one can touch it but you." I flipped through the pages, scanning the signatures and stamps. "You did good, Clara," he said. "You didn't just protect Lisa. You set a legal precedent. This case? It's being cited in 2 other states already." I looked up. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Families trying to take over dependent trusts. Lawyers are using your case to fight back." Iris let out a low whistle. "Guess you're famous now." "Not famous," I said. "Just loud enough to be heard." Duncan smiled. "You need anything else? You call me. Otherwise, enjoy the quiet." He left, and I stood there for a moment, holding the file like it was something sacred. Iris came to stand beside me. "You know," she said, "we could do more with this." "With what?" "This story. The legal process. The way you handled it. We could build something. Resources, workshops, even a support group. You're not the only one this has happened to." I looked at her. "You want to start a war?" She grinned. "No, I want to start a movement." I looked over at Lisa, who was now spinning her favorite sensory light toy, the colors dancing across her face. "Okay," I said. "Let's do it." Later that evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea while Lisa napped inside. The sun was setting, casting gold across the yard. Iris sat beside me, laptop open, already drafting ideas. "We'll need a name," she said. "Something strong," I replied. "Something that says, 'Don't mess with us.'" She typed a few words, then deleted them. "We'll figure it out." I sipped my tea. "You really think people will listen?" "They already are," she said. "Every time someone Googles your case, they're learning how to fight back." I nodded slowly. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was building something. Lisa stirred inside, letting out a soft sound. I stood, walked back in, and kissed her forehead. "They tried to salt the earth around us, baby," I whispered. She smiled in her sleep, peaceful. "But they didn't know. We'd grown in drought before."